Forever. Dog.
Hello, and welcome to Outgrown, where we have guests on to discuss something from popular culture that they used to profoundly identify with and once thought would define them forever, but then eventually outgrew. Hi, Tom.
Hi, Julia. How are you?
I'm doing great. I'm excited about our guest today.
I know this is our friend and somebody we both admire.
Artist, writer, musician,
Director, illustrator.
He's the lead singer of The Unicorns, Islands.
Yes, so many things.
His name is Nick Thorburn.
Yes, thank you for doing it.
Hi.
Hi, Nick.
Hi.
Thank you for being here.
Thank you for having me.
So, Nick, tell us what we're talking about today.
Jane's addiction.
Here we go.
That would be the immediate smash cut.
And now for people who don't know, Jane's Addiction, it's an LA band from formed in the mid 80s. They popped in the late 80s, early 90s. They were huge, kind of the pre-Nirvana alternative band. That'd be fair to say.
Fair to say. And a post-hair metal, a kind of reaction to the hair metal scene that was happening in LA at the time.
Yeah, and they had some seriously huge albums. Nothing Shocking, Ritual de la Habitual, right?
Yeah.
So let's paint the picture here. You are a young lad in Canada. Where in Canada are we at this point?
Campbell River, Vancouver Island.
Okay, so
How old?
The year is 1996, and so I guess I'm 14, and my sister, who is a huge influence, a musical influence, older sister, was constantly going into her room and taking her CDs, or she would show me things, and this was one of the things I remember the moment she handed me the CD and said, I think you'd like this. And it was Nothing Shocking.
How much older was she?
3 years older.
Perfect.
And yeah, it just, I wasn't into like heavy music really at that point.
what was your relationship to music at all at that point?
A very strong connection to music. I think the way most kids, really feel music, feel the emotions and the energy from music. And but I had really had this more passive relationship to music where I was just a listener. I was never I couldn't play at all, getting into Jane's Addiction was like, oh, I want to do that. I used to fantasize about getting the same kind of echo machine that rack mount that Perry Farrell used on his voice, because echo is such a big part of his voice. And so, that was when I was like, I want to do that. Like, I want to sing like Perry Farrell, even though his range it's very high and much different from mine. But.
So they listening to this record made you feel like making music was more accessible in a way?
It wasn't like, oh, I could do this. It wasn't like a kind of punk thing, because that was really my way in, was a year or two later making friends. Because I had moved to Campbell River, had no friends, was kind of ostracized in a way for a good reason. The first day of school, the day before I went to go get a haircut. And I was like, I just want a little fade on the back. Like, I just wanted to like clean it up. And the person gave me a mushroom cut. And I looked insane.
So this is the introduction of the new kid, Nick.
Well, there better be photos of this.
Well, no, what I said, I'm looking at myself in the mirror, seeing what's happening. And I've just got a straight, perfect, like Three Stooges mushroom cut.
Like not even a part.
I don't think it was just a perfect mop and with like a shaved back. I was like, oh, so I just said, can you just shave my head actually? So I just shaved it. But, I'm in like a prepubescent kind of like baby face look. So I look like a little boy who's trying to look tough.
Okay.
And was also wearing my sister's hand-me-downs.
You had a fully shaved head.
First day of school, fully shaved head.
Was the barber offended?
I didn't care. I was like, you know what? I changed my mind. You could just shave it. I was trying not to be too upset, but I was dying inside. And then so the first day, I think I showed up looking like a tough kid who looked like he had something to prove. So it was like I was inviting confrontation.
I completely understand.
Sure.
Wait, you said your sister's hand-me-downs though, but these were more like butch clothes or?
Yeah, like my sister was like like she was really into the riot grrrl and the grunge kind of movement. So it was like baggy corduroy pants and just like kind of skatewear adjacent. And so that was another thing where it's like I wasn't a skateboarder, but I had these clothes that were vaguely skateboarder coded or whatever. So all the skateboarders in my school were really quite mean and
Called you a poser.
bullies.
It's like stolen valor.
Yeah.
You're walking around dressed like a skateboarder, but you're not a skateboarder.
Yeah.
Yeah, I got called a poser for the exact same thing.
Okay. Really?
Yeah.
Yeah. So I was like kind of brutalized for the first couple of years, and then went to the high school the next year, and then met this punk named Nick, who, had like the green mohawk and everything, and he was a year older, but he was taking a lot of same classes as me, and he took me in under his wing, and then suddenly I had all these like little punk friends, and they were all starting bands. And that's kind of when I started getting into punk and like Crass and Propagandy, the Canadian punk band,
Sure,
amongst others. And then I that was when I was kind of like, the bar is a little lower than I realized for like actually doing this. And then I can marry the thing that I love, which is this like band from LA called Jane's Addiction that just for some reason speaks to me on this primal level.
Sure. So, but what were you listening to that would be like, oh, this is the music I like before Jane's Addiction enters your world? What would be an example of where you were at?
And I attribute this all to my sister too, like because she was the one who I was going into her room and getting Suede and James and like British, like Britpop stuff.
Sure.
So I was accessing that stuff. So I was really into James and Radiohead and that kind of thing.
So kind of like stuff that had a melodic focus to it. But definitely rock music, but that kind of strummy Britpop.
Jangle.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But then suddenly, listen to this CD, intense cover.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
What was the cover?
It's a sculpture that Perry Farrell did. He designed all the covers, and it was of his girlfriend in Double, Casey Nicolai. And it's a naked kind of ceramic or sculptural thing of her in Double sitting on a chair, I guess, or something.
Correct me if I'm wrong. Is this the girlfriend? Was there like an article at one point where she was upset that she didn't get more credit for the formation of Jane's Addiction?
Recently.
I did read that.
Yeah. Well, what's funny is that we decided on this. You asked me to come on the show, and it was the one thing I could think of that really, I felt like there was a lot of like meat on the bone to talk about with music and all that kind of thing. And then all that crazy stuff happened in the news after that with their fight and then them breaking up for good, basically. So it was a weird timing.
And I don't know much about that, so I'm excited to hear the details.
Yeah. So when 14-year-old Nick Thorburn puts that CD on, did you have a little boombox in your room?
Yeah.
What did you have? So you take your sister's CD down the hall, you put it in, you close the door.
Yeah.
Was it a top loading? Or?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Suddenly...
loud.
Yeah. So suddenly you're hearing, does it just did everything just widen all of a sudden? Like, because it's a huge sound for them. And if you're listening to like bands like James and those bands, they're playing the songs, but there's not, these are not bands that seem larger than life in a lot of ways.
No, although James did have this kind of, I don't know how you describe it, but they did have this thing that they were trying to do, which was, I think in the UK, it's just different. And I think they were massive in the UK and were playing all the big festivals there and had this kind of stadium sort of sing-along sound. And then the record that really hit me was their big record that kind of crossed over into the US, which was the Brian Eno produced Laid, which did have this kind of grandiose, again, it's a more like, not maudlin, but like this kind of emotional, sentimental kind of thing. Whereas, Jane's Addiction felt more like animalistic or something.
Sure, because they're also, all the bands you named, Radiohead, Suede, James, and everything around, nobody is scary
No.
or seeming like, I don't know what the deal with this guy is.
Yeah.
He seems like a weird wizard,
Yeah.
mystic guy, like Perry Farrell. This is like what like Led Zeppelin was to people in the 70s. It's just they're rock stars.
Yeah.
Can you tell me a little bit about Jane's Addiction and how many members? Who are they?
4 members. Eric Avery on bass, Dave Navarro on guitar, who you may know from reality TV.
Ink Master.
Yes.
Ink Master.
Mm-hmm.
Stephen Perkins on drums, and then Perry Farrell singing. And Perry was like 10 years older, roughly, than the rest of the guys. So he'd been kind of in the scene for a while, doing other weird little experience, like goth rock, this goth band called Psycom. And so he'd been kind of doing his thing, and he met these young kids and then kind of just brought them in under his wing. And so he was kind of always the ringleader, this weird like Pied Piper kind of guy.
So what was like the power that came from, because I've had that feeling when suddenly something hits you like bullseye.
Yeah.
Is that what it was like?
Yeah. Yeah, it was a moment, definitely. It was just like a light switch, and it felt scary, but it didn't feel wrong. You know, I definitely came from this kind of world where like, you know, I had this kind of like relationship to morality with music, and like it should be, as a young little boy who was raised Catholic or whatever, I had this idea that, you know, music should be, there should be a sense of virtue or virtuosity or virtuousness in the music. So
what would be an example of somebody who was virtuous in music that passed the Thorburn test?
The Thorburn test? Well, I just remember there was a Canadian record, Maestro Fresh West, this rapper from Toronto. Let Your Backbone Slide was his big song. And I remember like loving it, like being obsessed with it in like the 4th or 5th grade. And then having this moment where it's like sort of rejecting it because it was, you know, there was like curse words or something.
Mm-hmm.
Like so you were very Catholic.
Well, I don't know what I was. I was just kind of a babe in the woods or whatever. Sure. I hadn't been awakened to anything. I remember when I discovered The Doors from the movie around that same time, like being kind of getting drawn into Jim Morrison, who Perry, that you can definitely see the thread there, this California like mystic shaman grifter or whatever.
Yeah.
Were your parents, did they have any say over what things you could or could not listen to when you were younger?
No, they weren't really with movies, but not with music. I don't think they really clocked it.
You were just looking out for yourself, making sure you didn't consume too much.
Yeah. And on road trips, I was looking out for myself. And on road
You're
trips,
like, I'll protect my virtue.
Yes.
Yeah.
No, I was guided by the hand of God, absolutely. But yeah, we would get to listen on like long car trips. We'd get to listen to, because we that would be our holiday. We would just like get in the car and go visit family in the interior of British Columbia or whatever. And you know, my mom, they would be listening to either like talk radio, like CBC, which is like the BBC of Canada, or NPR, or like Andrew Lloyd Webber cassettes. Okay. And then we would get to listen to like CNC Music Factory and that kind of thing as our...
Sure, just like that was what was the trade, yeah. For everyone.
Yeah,
everybody could sign off on that.
Yeah, we'd have to pass, you know, share the thing. But I don't think they weren't paying too close attention. And there was never like, I don't like this, like you shouldn't be listening to this. So
did they like the Cats soundtrack?
Probably. I just remember Les Miserables soundtrack like blasting. On
Do you like
trips.
know that soundtrack?
No, I've shut it. I've completely blocked it out.
That's too bad.
I'm very anti-music.
Sing along at the end.
So when that was in the car, you're just like, this is not my music.
Yeah.
Like that was not even up for discussion.
Yeah. But then they'd also like Tom Petty greatest hits or like some Fleetwood Mac stuff, some Paul Simon stuff.
Sure.
So we get a little reprieve.
Then you got inspired by your sister.
Yeah, and one of the biggest inspirations, and something I was thinking about when I was thinking about coming on, as far as like being outgrown, feeling like I've outgrown something, and then feeling like something still resonates with me, is The Cure. And that was my sister's absolute favorite band. Obsessed, like just absolute obsession. And I took the way she felt about The Cure was the way I dove into Jane's Addiction, who are, you know, very different bands and have a very different trajectory, and The Cure are just like massive. But this, Perry Farrell and Robert Smith are the same age. They're 65. And The Cure just released a record.
Like it was this week.
Yes. And I listened to it last night.
How is it?
It's okay. I think I need a bit of time with it. It's pretty harsh kind of sounding, but it's also really beautiful, and his voice is incredible, and he's still like making good stuff. And so it was really interesting to see that contrasted with Jane's Addiction, who just imploded this year after getting back together. And I'm so detached from them and as a band, and but still feel like a real connection to The Cure. So it was kind of a funny contrast.
Yeah, that's interesting.
Yeah, because one is The Cure are inward.
Yeah.
There's a lot of the emotion. Jane's Addiction is very outward.
Yeah, visceral and
Yeah. Well, what did it feel? Did you feel like, I can only say when there were certain bands, like for me, Led Zeppelin, I was also a good kid. I didn't curse. I was very respectful of my parents.
Yeah.
I was well behaved, all of that stuff. But then you're letting this thing into your world that's like scary.
Yeah.
Kind of, it is somewhere that you're not.
Mm-hmm.
You
in
know
terms
it's a
of-
bad influence on you.
Yeah, potentially, you're kind of courting danger or mischief or whatever. So you're going somewhere. Your parents are not a part of this experience. You're kind of,
The rebel is awakening.
yeah.
Right. And that's a rite of passage, right? Like you have to allow a little evil in to just see what it's all about. Not that Led Zeppelin or Jane's Addiction or Maestro Fresh Wes are evil in any
No, but there's a certain amount of, there's a scariness to
Yeah.
it because these are adults, and then it's implied, oh, they do drugs
Yeah.
was the other thing. When that enters the thing, it's like the idea that these bands like party
Yeah.
and do adult things.
Yeah.
So what did you do when that initial thing happened? When you go back to school now you're a Jane's Addiction fan.
And it sort of insulated me from those like outside aggressors. Like when I felt bullied in ninth grade when I was new in school, but I had this weird, it's a little cliche. I mean, you hear people talk about it, but I had this kind of protective armor where I had, the tape, with the boombox, I had a cassette on the bottom. And so you could make mixtapes, and I would just I would record the songs that I liked and have be able to like insulate myself from that. And Jane's Addiction was a big part of that. And it coincided with the World Wide Web becoming a thing. And so I was going in these chat rooms that were Jane's Addiction chat rooms. And I was trading bootlegs, I was getting these like cassettes in the mail that were.
So you're mailing to each other, yeah.
Yeah, I was getting really deep into this kind of fandom, I guess.
Very cool.
Did you have a shirt?
I had a shirt, but it was borrowed from my sister.
Okay.
I wish I still had it because it's probably worth like a couple $100
Yeah.
now.
Your sister sounds pretty cool.
Yeah.
She's cool. She's my guiding light in a lot of ways. Yeah.
How did she react to watching you become so drawn to this one band?
I don't know. We've fought like cats and dogs growing up. Like we physically would fight a lot. And so it was only really when she graduated high school and left town that we became friends. So I think there was a lot of competition. I think she just kind of almost ignored it. I don't think she was even really aware, but maybe, I don't know. It's sibling rivalry and love is a very nuanced kind of thing. I think
You're talking 3-year age difference, you said?
Yeah,
And
but
that's
2 grades
Okay.
separated us. So.
Because that's, if you think about it, nobody wants their younger sibling to be exactly where they're at.
Right.
You want to be ahead of.
Yes,
your
she's
kid
bushwhacking
brother.
for me.
Yeah. Like, because it's almost like, I'm 3 years older than you.
Yeah.
We can't be equals.
Yeah. It's like she threw me a Jane's Addiction crumb to keep the cure all for herself or something.
It's
like, you have this.
Yeah.
Yeah.
She's just throwing decoys at it.
It's funny. I just saw my sister recently. Elise is her name, and she brought to my attention something I'd forgotten. It pertains to this, which I was so in the tank for Jane's Addiction up until I left Campbell River and went to Montreal to go to film school and start music stuff making music. My bank PIN for my debit card was Royal Bank. You could have 12, up to 12 digits or whatever.
The
Or
12-digit PIN number?
Yeah. So my password was Perry Farrell.
Oh.
And
that's so
when
cute.
the Unicorns were on, it remained that for years. And when the Unicorns were touring a ton in 2004, I took a break in between tours and flew down to Costa Rica and Panama just by myself, just to get away from everything. And I was down there and brought my debit card, and there was you put the thing in the ATM and you're only allowed 4 pins, like most places.
Yeah.
Canada, I guess, allowed 12. So I couldn't use I was out of cash because Perry Farrell was my password.
Oh, that's
So my
fun.
sister had to like wire me, Western Union me money or something. And it was a whole ordeal.
That's so funny.
Yeah.
What was your friend group like by this point? Who were you hanging out with? What were they like?
Once I found the group,
Once you so initially there's a pretty fallow stretch here in terms of
zero friends.
Zero friends.
Truly.
Wait, really?
And
Yeah.
how long did that when you moved to the new town, you were like 100% alone?
I would say I had like sympathy. I think I had people that were kind to me out of sympathy, but
Was this like a thing you didn't want friends?
no, I was just no one. It was like, you can't be friends. I was just a target.
Were
Like,
you mean or?
No, I was just targeted for whatever reason. Then it was like I was toxic.
Interesting.
Like I got it pretty bad. Like I got, every day I got tormented and thrown into a locker, dragged into the bathroom for swirlies,
Wow,
choked
like
by.
Whoa.
I had a girl in front of me in class. The teacher left the room and for whatever reason, she had a garbage bag in her pocket or something. And she took this giant garbage bag wrapped into like a rope type thing and just
Dude.
choked me out. I mean, I went to
That's terrible.
Yeah.
Oh Jesus.
That's
A lot
like
of, like-
beyond bullying. That's
Yeah,
assault.
These are
Yeah.
what happened to the Canada I thought.
Yeah.
this is
This sounds
the
like an
meanest-
That's what
American
they want you
school.
to. That's what they want you to think.
Yeah.
Yeah. It
Jesus,
was,
that's like a movie.
Yeah. It was pretty bad. And there was this little kid. I think his name was Jason. Never trusted Jason.
Yeah.
No, they're always up to something.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There was this little twerp, this little runt, but he had these big bully friends that he'd surround himself with. And so he would like push me around and, but because his friends were behind him and if like I pushed him back, they would just knock me out. So one day I followed him home and my one friend, Bucky Littlewing was his name. He moved to Campbell River at the same time as me from the same town.
I'm sorry, Bucky Littlewing?
Yeah.
That's a really good name.
I know.
Yeah.
He's a good guy. He hid in the bushes while I followed this kid home, but then the next day I got like knocked to the ground for threatening this little kid.
And how did this end?
It just kind of it was like a long tail. Like it went all the way through high school, but once I had my group, my like punk outcast, I was mostly left alone. There were moments here and there where I'd get punched in the head or like called homophobic slurs or whatever by a guy who was wearing a Pixies shirt. I was like, "Hey, I like your shirt." He's like, "Shut up, F word." I was like, "Okay."
Wow.
It's like some angry Pixies fans out there.
Yeah. There's a lot of
That
anger.
is so interesting. So did the bullying make you an angrier young person?
No, it just made me withdrawn. My
Okay.
mom told me recently I would come home from school and just go into my room and shut the door. And
Would then you create art? Would you write about this or?
no, I think I wanted to. I wanted that outlet. And I think it did tie into my love of music and like, oh, this is like a really great way to express your feelings. And
Yeah. Like,
Go ahead.
oh, sorry. I was just going to say, like, how do you think being bullied that relentlessly like has affected you as an adult?
Well, for years and years, I downplayed it and was like, I wasn't bullied or kids need to get bullied. It makes you stronger.
Yeah, I've said that a few times.
Then I went to
I've
therapy.
also said
Yeah.
that, yeah. And
Then I
I
went
know.
to
Then you're
therapy.
like, maybe they shouldn't
Yeah.
be bullied.
Start to realize I was being attacked regularly.
Yeah, you're like, maybe that wasn't good for me.
Yeah, these were crimes being committed against me.
Yeah. I realized that it has affected, I'm not trying to be a victim at all. I'm fine. And it was.
Oh, sure. It's just fascinating to
Yeah.
talk about.
it took a while for me to come out of my shell. And I think music was absolutely a safe place. And having this group of little punk friends, and we would go to the nearby town, we'd get in my older friend's car and we'd drive to the $5 punk shows and go see bands that were touring Vancouver Island. These little hardcore punk bands are like early, just little scrappy bands. And then it was kind of like, well, I want to do this too. And that was kind of set me on my path.
So that's what gave you permission to actually say, I'm going to start doing this also.
Yeah.
Jane's Addiction, did that feel like it was up from on high and it's like I could never be that?
Well, that was the goal. That was like, let's reach for that.
Okay.
Do you think you've reached that goal?
Well, I don't think I want to reach that goal. Hence why we're here.
So Jane's Addiction was aspirational.
Yeah.
And
daydream aspirations.
Sure. And did you have a member of the band that spoke to you? Like, what was your relationship to the individuals in the band?
Well, what was so great back then was that you didn't have access into these, like the way now with, again, this is stuff people talk about endlessly, but this idea in the 90s, you couldn't reach these. They were mysterious, And so I watched like they had a tour doc thing they made called The Gift, called Soul Kiss. And then they had this weird movie they made called The Gift, Perry and Casey, his partner, and you just get glimpses into their personalities. And
you
stuff.
get a very specifically curated look
which is how it should be. Really,
it's kind of nice, the mystique of
I like
artists.
the mystique.
Mystery is such a huge underappreciated aspect to art.
Yeah, because then our brains get to fill in the gaps and we can project whatever we want.
Yeah, totally.
So what were you filling in with that when you were in that? So you're seeing these, they're in America, they're in Los Angeles.
Did you think LA was cool?
Yeah, I wasn't like, ooh, LA. I think it was just an unknown kind of, the whole thing felt mysterious. I mean, just America itself felt kind of mysterious.
Had you been properly to America at this point?
Brief once as a child, and then going to actually see The Cure. We did like a family road trip, and The Cure were playing in George, Washington at the Gorge in George, which you've performed at that location, right?
Did not go well.
I know that story.
That was me and it is a well-documented story. Me and John Worster performing at the Sasquatch Music Festival.
Oh, okay,
in the Comedy Tent, which... Who doesn't love a comedy tent at a music festival?
They go so well together.
No one wants it.
That kick drum thumping as you try to...
Yeah, everyone likes that.
Because they're playing in the other 400 feet away is a loud band playing while you're trying to talk on stage. Yeah. No one wants it.
Oh, it's always so funny.
So you went to that spot.
Yeah, and went to Seattle and just was like, this is like an important place. And also this is where Fantagraphics, this comic book publisher that I was really getting into, like Peter Baggs' Hate and R. Crumb stuff. And so it was this really like fertile time for me. And then to be there and to see like even, just Seattle, like which... At the time, it seemed like kind of ancient, but it was 1996. It was only 2 years after Kurt Cobain had killed himself. And, but that's another thing too, is like, I'm talking about this period of time when I was listening to, really into Jane's Addiction. They had broken up 5 years before in 1991. 5 years for me at that time when I was 14 seemed like a lifetime.
Yeah.
Like this was kind of an ancient band that didn't exist anymore.
That's so funny, the way that time works in kids' brains. Wait, so we didn't finish hearing what you thought about each member.
Oh, well, Perry was the guy. Like that was who I wanted to be.
Because he's what part of it?
Yeah, let's describe him for people who don't know.
Well, he had dreadlocks, but he was a white.
Oh, he had
man.
dreads at that time?
Yeah, little really thin ones that looked, and he could like brush. It was almost like he could brush them back. It was really, you don't really see those. Anyway,
you don't really see.
Nick, you could bring it back.
Look, it's not too late.
I wanted to do, trust me, I looked up, the beeswax thing and how to do it. Thank God.
What's the closest you came to trying the Perry Farrell mini dreads?
Well, I would put Knox gelatin in my hair, which is like these egg white powder, and I would like spike my hair. This
Barely
stuff
ever
is
wash your hair.
glue, like
Yeah.
Knox gelatin. It's really, you just heat it up. It's this powder. It really stinks, and then you just my punk friend Nick, when he'd make his mohawk, he'd use egg whites. I remember
Oh, that would smell.
it smelled, but the Knox gelatin had this weird, like salty kind of smell too. It was really gross. But I didn't ever get into that. But Perry was also into scarification, the tribal ritual of like scarring your body with these designs, and obviously a lot of tattoos. And so I was like curious and fascinated by all of that, but never,
Do
thankfully.
you have any scars or tattoos?
Zero?
Well, what's
Okay.
the closest you came to that? Or did you just feel like, oh, I'm not ready for that?
Well, I never got that. I never got that close. And, I also knew my kind of limitations. Like Perry just seemed like this. He was older. He was a man, and he was like lean and sinewy and wiry. And, he just had this different body. I was this like shy little kid who hadn't developed or whatever. So I knew I couldn't really pull off any of that kind of stuff, I guess.
Yeah. Well, you're not like you'd be.
Scarified.
You would not be you.
Yeah.
If you're a
would not be-
14-year-old boy,
we would all not be friends if you were the kid when you were 14, 15. You're just kind of like, yeah, I'm gonna get some scarification.
Yeah, and get my
and stuff.
nose.
Yeah,
my
you would
s-
not. We would not probably have ended up in the same circles.
Yeah, it would have gone.
did you have piercings?
No.
Too
No.
scary.
Yeah, it all seemed too scary. The little Catholic boy in me was still like hiding in the shadows.
What was your takeaway, your opinion when you learned about all like the drugs that they were and the decadence around the band being this nice Catholic boy?
Yeah, I don't know. I don't remember what I felt about it. I mean, I must have known. I think I was somewhat naive to it, but I don't know. I don't remember. I mean, that was such a big part of the band. I mean, it's in the title, right? I mean, the idea is that the music is Jane's addiction, but obviously so much of their songs were him telling stories about like looking for dope or getting high or being high.
And that movie, The Gift,
Yeah.
that is basically a love letter to
Heroin.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What did you think of Dave Navarro?
I thought he was super cool.
Me too.
I thought he was super cool. Super. The weird thing about him is he looks kind of the same.
He looks
For the
very
past, like,
similar.
30
we saw him
years.
at Home Depot
Yeah.
a couple
Wow.
years ago.
About 5 years ago.
Wow.
We were at Home Depot right before pandemic.
Well, and I met Dave Navarro when I first moved to LA at like the Rainbow Room.
I met him too when I first
Really?
moved to LA.
Yeah, and he was super nice.
The
and
Frolic Room.
We talked about like documentaries. and
Okay.
he even gave me his number and stuff. He would
Wow.
never remember any of this. But yeah, he was very nice.
Yeah.
And like not at all creepy.
Yeah. He seems like a nice guy.
Yeah. And then when we saw him at Home Depot a couple of years ago, he
Yeah.
was like he was so tiny.
He is
got so
tiny.
tiny.
Yeah.
These guys are little.
But
Yeah.
he's like well put together.
Yeah.
Though. He walks. He is a walking, talking rock star.
Yeah, he's
Yeah.
a rock
Like
star.
when he's in Home Depot, you're just like, oh, a rock star. It's not the idea like, oh, Dave Navarro's not as cool as I thought. You just see him at Home Depot, you're just like, holy moly, there's a rock star at Home Depot, right? He's walking down the alley like he owns the
And
Home
it's not like he's
Depot.
wearing an Affliction hoodie. He's
No.
probably like
No,
wearing a vest.
He had a giant poncho on.
Yeah.
Okay, great.
Yeah, it
he's
was a
just
kind of
like-
a goth poncho look.
Great.
That's his Home Depot
poncho.
wear.
But it's cute.
Right, that's him.
poncho.
It's cute. You can't. Yeah, I don't know.
Throwing it on.
I know, like whatever. A lot of people make jokes about Dave Navarro, or whatever. But I think you can't help but be charmed by him.
He seems
Yeah.
incredibly likable. Like just like he that's the energy he gives off. Where it's just
Yeah.
like this guy seems like a good guy.
Yep,
Yeah.
Yep. Whereas perhaps other members of the band, particularly Perry Farrell.
Let's go through the other two.
Okay.
Eric Avery.
So Eric Avery was the quiet, introspective one who kind of, I think, had more. He seemed like he had the best musical taste of the bunch, maybe. And when they reunited or relapsed, as they called it,
Oh boy,
I drove. I was
don't like that.
I was 16. I just turned 16. I can't believe my parents let me do this, or you could even cross the border like this. But this was in 1997. They played Portland. They played the basketball arena in Portland, and me and three of my friends Somehow I like got tickets on Ticketmaster, I like through the phone. It was this very primitive system, but we drove down from Vancouver Island. We drove to Portland and went to see Jane's Addiction. And that was when Flea was filling in because Eric he didn't want any part of it. So he was a holdout for a long time when they eventually reunited for good.
Stephen Perkins
also seems like a sweet guy. He and a good drummer, and he went over to Porno for Pyros with Perry when Jane's Addiction broke up. He started the new band, and so he just seemed like a kind of loyal, like, I'll go here. And I think he's really regarded in the rock world as like, I don't know. I mean, all of that stuff is cheesy to me. It all reads like as Guitar Center, but these like magazines with Guitar World and Drum World, it's all like technical people, and I think he's considered like a real technical guy.
Sure. And what did that mean for you when you decided that, hey, I'm going to start making music too? What did the idea of being technically proficient, because on one hand, you're listening to this band they're players, Jane's Addiction.
Yeah.
And on the other hand, you've got these punk bands, and the whole point of punk, you're talking about ideas, not about musicianship
Technical
first.
proficiency.
Exactly.
Yeah. And feeling and wanting to say something. And
so what was that divide?
Well, it was a divide, but I think it was healthy to have the two polar things as guideposts. Like I have this framework here. I have this technical prowess, and then I have this just like raw feeling or whatever. And then Perry,
you saw the value in both.
Yeah,
worlds.
and Perry was obviously more of the like raw, non-musician. I mean, I heard once sort of going off on a tangent, but Brian Eno quit Roxy Music because he said we can't have two non-musicians in the band. Like Brian Ferry was the front man who was not bringing like the technician side of it. And that was one of his reasons for leaving, was like, there's already a non-musician in the band. And so it's kind of important, I think, to have someone like that can show that other side of
Absolutely.
it. And that is kind of my role, I think, when I make music now with Islands. I'm less of a like technician and more of just like a feelings guy.
But that's the thing, is we've talked about this, where you're not the kind of guitarist where you just like pick up a guitar and start playing somebody else's songs.
Yeah.
You use the guitar to execute ideas you have. So with you, it has always seemed like it is an idea first thing artistically, not a musicianship thing first.
Yeah.
But you can play, but you just don't put that first. Like when Islands went to the 3-person lineup, the guitar stuff all fell to you.
Yeah.
And you were delivering on that, and then some. It was amazing to see you just breaking that out. It hasn't been like you're not defining yourself through chops first.
Yeah.
It's through ideas first.
Yeah, and that might be my own insecurity or something, but that's sort of where I landed, I guess, and feel comfortable.
Wait, why is that insecure?
Well, just feeling like when you see someone who can like rip on a guitar and just pick up a guitar and play anything, and I don't have that, like, it's not automatic for me, I guess.
I would think it's more vulnerable, and you'd have to be more secure to let your feelings out rather than like hide behind technical proficiency.
Yeah, that's a good point. I mean, that's an emotional security, I guess. Yeah.
Sure, because there's a lot of people who there are so many just players who the biggest critique of them is that they don't have any feeling.
Right.
Because they're just technically proficient.
Right.
When you're talking about your ideas and your vision and stuff like that's nothing but feeling.
Yeah. That's a good point.
And
you're very brave.
Yes, we just want to tell you how brave we think you are.
Thank you.
So what's the peak of your Jane's Addiction fandom? Is it driving to Portland now?
That was definitely I would say the apex, because shortly after that, it just kind of fizzled. I moved to Montreal. I was still like carrying that with me into this like next chapter, but I was now opening up to a whole new world of, my roommate at the time, Chloe. Yeah, I won't go into big things, but she had this immense record collection and just turned me on to so much stuff, like whatever. Endless.
What was like the first thing that comes to mind that stepped in front of Jane's Addiction in your life?
It was like the Delta 72, John Spencer Blues Explosion, Blonde Redhead. It was like, the Oblivions. Like it was this whole world of of stuff that she was kind of doling out to me, basically.
Yeah, where suddenly there's like, oh my God, there's hundreds of these that I don't know about.
Yeah.
It's such a mind-blowing experience when you realize, oh, there's been a whole scene going this whole time that has been waiting for me to jump into the pool.
And once you plug into that, there's kind of no going back, you know?
Yeah. I mean, I understand that. It's just like a lot of the Britpop stuff I missed in the first go-round because I was in that pool with all the indie stuff.
Yeah.
Because there was also just no substitute for, it's one thing to have your heroes be on high, but there's another thing to go to a show and you can go up and say hi to the people in the band afterwards, and they say hi back and they talk, and you realize, oh, you might just be one step ahead of me.
Yeah.
That's all. It's like, you're not different than me. You just might be further down the road than me.
Yeah.
And what was that power like for you to realize, oh, this is
right. And I think that's where going to the punk shows and seeing it and having these friends who are starting bands, seeing like that this isn't just, I don't have to just be in my room listening. I can like try to be a part of it because the motivation is like, because it's so fun. You know, it looks so fun. It sounds so fun. And it just, I want a piece of that, you know?
So when did you first pick up a guitar?
I remember picking up a guitar a few years before and just like making noise for hours and thinking it sounded so cool. And I remember it was still having enough self-awareness that like, this just sounds, I don't know what I'm doing. I'm just finding places to put which is kind of how I ended up doing it. Like I just put my fingers where it sort of made sense. Like, oh, that's a C chord. What if I move that up here? And then, okay, that, you know, and just kind of placing fingers where it started. But I remember being in my friend's basement, in Mike Kirk's basement, one of the my punk friends, and putting on his guitar, and everyone laughed at me because I put the guitar strap like just over my instead of like that, and they were all like kind of laughing at me, and you know, they didn't let me join their band, and so I almost had this kind of revenge where it's like,
fuck them.
I'm gonna start a band and like, show you guys.
Yeah.
Sometimes that is the best motivation, spite.
Sometimes? That's the only thing I question.
For Tom, it's your main motivation.
No, I'm the type of person who, I'm not going to name names, but I'll hang a picture in my, across from where I wake up to see if somebody I'm...
Name rhymes with Blaren Blorkin.
Yes, who there was a little bit of a thing, and I'm just like, I got to beat that guy.
Yeah.
So
please.
And look, that stuff can't drive you solely.
No.
But I think there's something positive about wanting to show yourself in the face of other people.
It makes you step it up a little bit more.
Yeah.
It's for whatever it's worth, and like whether it's regrettable or not, but it is a ingredient in that stew where you just have to, and you see it with people who are really successful. There is a drive there that is often about proving your place in all of it, and it shouldn't be the main motivator, but it has to be. Yeah, it has to be. You have to feel like. Otherwise, you're like, well, why? I don't need to. There's enough people doing this. Why would I?
That's exactly it. It's like
point,
it's so easy in this field. It's like if any of us said, "Hey, I'm not doing it anymore," the world just keeps moving.
Yeah.
It doesn't say, "Whoa, no, please come back, please, we're begging you." It's like
Sadly.
There might be like a couple weeks of people, "Oh, you're not doing all. That's too bad. That sucks." And then the world, they find someone else to get excited about.
Yeah.
Because that's how entertainment works.
Yeah.
After Jane's Addiction faded as your band, what was your relationship with Jane's Addiction for the rest of for the next 25, 30 years?
There was a bit of embarrassment that I'd gone so deep into this band, but it was mostly just oblivious. I was just kind of, because I was also, it sort of coincided with me, with starting the Unicorns and then making the record and then touring. And then it was just like deep in the rear view. I was completely checked out from a band where I knew as much of the intimate details as I could from message boards and bootlegs and all that stuff. I went from that to like really not being aware peripherally, no pun intended, on,
Yeah,
on
that's what I
Perry
was going to say.
Farrell's
Perry
name.
Farrell's peripheral is his name.
That's purposeful?
Yeah, Perry Bernstein is his real name.
Oh,
You're just, this is.
He
we're
was a
watching-
kid.
Yeah, we're watching the illusions shatter one after
Crumbling.
the other.
I know you haven't even gotten a chance to get into them.
So you were basically moved past it. What would it feel like if suddenly you heard Jane Says or some kind of if when it did cross your path?
so was that much later? Like Jane Says that was
No, that
later?
that was on their first record.
Oh, okay, cool.
Yeah,
and
So I've heard.
you know Jane's Addiction.
yeah.
know Jane
So that was from '88. Nothing Shocking, I think, and then Ritual was '91, and then they had a live record that was like a fake XXX release. They're like.
The pre-major label.
Yeah, even though
label.
they'd already signed, they had to they did the thing that actually people do still, which is before you put out your major label debut, you put something out on an indie to give yourself some cred. And so
Oh,
But the deal's in place.
oh,
honestly.
so it
That's-
was like a
Smashing
manipulation, like it was like a
Pumpkins-
trick.
Smashing Pumpkins
Smashing Pumpkins
famously-
was a huge thing
Caroline.
where they had their major label deal in place, but then they put one album out on Caroline Records, which was an independent label that was not exactly independent. It still had ties. You go up the ladder to Virgin
upstream.
Records, but it's a way to be like, this is a small band, indie band, get all the
Wow,
cred. But
that
the
is
deal,
sneaky.
and if they pop, boom, we're upstairs at the major label.
Yeah.
It's locked. It's already signed, sealed, and delivered.
Okay.
But it's the game. It's like
Yeah.
people want to they want indie cred before they go become huge because it matters
Yeah.
to a lot of fans.
Yeah.
Yeah. Especially
So-
during that time.
Oh, absolutely. Then cred was everything in
Everything,
the 90s. Yeah.
yeah.
So if you heard a Jane's Addiction song, you saw something, what would that bring up in you?
There's a nice feeling of nostalgia. There's definitely a distance to it. I've gone in little waves over the last, let's say, 10 years from being just like really just completely divorced from any relationship to the music, to acknowledging, John Daly had a similar upbringing with Jane's Addiction, I think.
Okay.
And Alex Karpovsky as well. So I've had these moments where we'll like be in a car and like put it on.
Mm-hmm.
You have a little sing along?
I don't sing along, no, but you do feel, yeah, there is something compelling. You kind of want to, I think, because there is like a spirit of it that just feels like cathartic. You want to join in.
If we did do a karaoke night and I requested
I could.
Jane's Addiction.
It's like
You couldn't go under it vocally?
I guess so. I'd wanted like someone else to be doing it with me, I think.
Okay.
I'll do it. I'll do it.
Get John Daly up there with
But
you.
Stop is like the
Julia
first.
will get up there.
The first song on
Jane says-
Ritual, Jane Says, I've always was like, this is kind of an annoying. I mean, it's a very basic two chords song. It's not, I've kind of come to peace with the band where it doesn't like hit me anymore. But whereas like The Cure will still like, I still feel like deeply moved by their music. But I recognize what about Jane's Addiction was meaningful to me, and I'll hear like Stop from Ritual, De La Habitual, the first song, and like, yeah, this is like adrenaline. Like I feel excitement. I can like access that memory of it,
Sure. Look, I was not a Jane's Addiction fan, but like a song like that it really feels like like I said earlier, like you're grabbing onto a live wire because it's on the edge and it's really up in your face. And the video is just them just being a rock band, being a huge thing. I couldn't picture any kid of that age not being kind of like I want more of that.
Yeah.
What that is.
It really synchronizes nicely, I think, with being young, like a young, for me, I can only speak for myself, but like a young boy or whatever, and just starting to feel feelings and like emotions and maybe testosterone and like hearing that, and then hearing like 9 Inch Nails, that was another band, or like Skinny Puppy, like, and feeling that energy and that aggression too, like a place to pour that kind of anger.
Yeah, because you said you weren't an angry kid.
Yeah, but I must have, getting like clocked in the head and like pushed down.
There's got to be something.
It's got to go
and
somewhere.
and you were getting it out through
I think
this aggressive music.
Yeah, and like Dead Kennedys and stuff like that.
And what would if you had to tell somebody to listen to one Jane's Addiction song now to get what you got at that point, what would you tell somebody to listen to?
Maybe Mountain Song from
Okay.
Nothing Shocking. God, I mean, and Stop is really good. I mean, there's other great examples of what moved me, but they're a little more like 3 days. There's this like long, like drawn out. But what's like a kind of an immediate hit, I think, would be something like Mountain Song or Ocean Sighs off Nothing Shocking, and Stop maybe from.
And is there any part of you, even if it's just turned upside down and whatever, that where you'd be just like, yeah, that is their influence on me now? Or do you feel like you are completely bereft of influence?
I mean, I think Arm's Way, me trying to do these like soaring vocals was probably like somehow an influence, like
Okay.
absorbed from
Sure.
wanting to sing like Perry, wanting to sing high and have this like, to me, like the idea of like the higher you sing is the better you sing. Like range is everything, and if you don't have range, it's a critique of your ability. And so when I was trying to prove myself with Arm's Way, that one of the things was like how much can I stretch this range, you know?
And would you ever go, well, just tell us about this year, this past month or so.
Yeah.
They got back together and
It went great.
seems like the window might have closed on
Yep.
getting to see Jane's Addiction ever again.
So what exactly happened?
Well, I don't know behind the scenes, but I mean, what we all saw was Perry Farrell attacking Dave Navarro on stage, and then Eric Avery coming over and just going, like just gut punching Perry to disengage him.
Oh, wow. I didn't see the gut punch.
Yeah, and if you look at the setlist.fm set list, you know, it shows that it's a great website to show like what people are playing every night. There's a little asterisk for like special notes, and it's like it was Stephen Perkins' birthday. Like there was balloons on his drum kit or whatever because it was his birthday. So just this idea that like this not really arguably like a very nice guy is just trying to weather the storm and hold it down on the drums, and it's his birthday.
And this is when he's
And
watching.
the front guy, he's got to look at his ass every night, is just acting like a chimpanzee.
So this was purely like a drug, alcohol-induced
Don't know.
episode? Okay. Because Dave Navarro, as we all know, is very tiny. So
and
to
they all,
lash out at
you know,
him.
the Relapse tour, I didn't learn this till years and years later, but the 97 tour, they were getting back into heroin. That
Okay.
was not just like a funny name for their tour. That was like them relapsing into their old ways. And they hadn't toured in a while. And I think it was this like place for them to do it. And, but you know, at the time I was 16, they were probably 30. They were young. I mean, Dave Navarro especially was like in his early 30s, if that. So they were young guys. They seemed ancient at the time. Like, oh, these old timers are reuniting. But
yeah. What was like the strangest thing you ever did as a fan? Did you ever like draw artwork of them or write them letters?
just daydreamed, I think, about like hitchhiking or seeing Perry while hitchhiking and picking him up and just having like it was more like a fantasy stuff.
Really?
Yeah.
You wanted to like drive him around in your car?
I just wanted I wanted to like be friends with these people.
Why was he hitchhiking in your fantasy?
Because I think that's what we used to. That would be. I don't know. I think back then.
You imagined he was down on his luck?
No, just like bumming. Yeah, I don't know. Because I was a kid, and that's what that's how I would get around.
That's cool.
Like along Vancouver Island, it was a lot of like I remember hitchhiking to the Fugazi and Victoria. That was years later, but
Did you think he had wisdom that he could impart to you?
yeah, he seemed like a sage, you know.
Okay.
I'm curious as to like when did you start getting into like girls and stuff? Did your interest in music? Did you want to get together with ladies?
Well, cheekily, I think the reason we called the unicorns was like, oh, girls like unicorns. Like there was a playfulness. Like,
I mean,
how can we
it
endear
definitely
ourselves?
worked.
Yeah, obviously, it's very like unicorns are young. We weren't like trying to appeal to children, but
Yeah. Okay.
yeah. There was this idea that like a nostalgia thing, like oh, unicorns are like, and it was playful. It was kind of just like a joke, like how how to be enticing or something. I remember hearing Gene Simmons talk about like every person who's ever started a band has done it to meet chicks, and if they disagree, they're lying. And
Well, if
obviously
they're gay, they're not lying.
right,
That's
or they're
true.
not, or they're not. Women can start bands too, you know.
That's true. Also, yeah.
Yeah, I don't know about that.
I don't know if you heard, but
Ladies are out there making music these days. Yeah, there are two things that girls love: unicorns and islands.
Yep,
They love islands.
yeah, they love islands.
unicorns.
Yeah,
it's true.
Yeah.
I was on a different track. And Gene Simmons.
And they
Yeah,
love Gene
love
Simmons.
him.
So, Nick, the most recent album, Islands album, album number 10,
Yeah.
What Occurs. It's a great album. It's been
Thanks.
out for a few months now. And you just put out a new song like today
This morning.
when we're recording it. It's a charity
For a
effort.
very good cause.
Yeah. Could you want to talk about that?
Sure. Yeah. Well, yeah, I just wrote it last week. It just kind of poured out of me, I guess. I was just feeling helpless with the ongoing genocide assault of occupied Palestine. It's been something I've been feeling for years and years. I remember even in 2002 in Montreal going to protest Netanyahu when he came to Concordia, to my university. So it's just been something, just this basic idea of like an injustice anywhere, is an injustice everywhere or whatever. And seeing this very blatant kind of cruelty made feeling so helpless and like what can be done. And I just felt this compulsion to do anything and use what tools I have. And so it's just a small gesture, but I just wanted to write this song where I could just give the money that it makes to this really great organization that operates in Gaza, a Canadian organization called GLIA that make these medical instruments, 3D print them, and they also send people to Gaza, doctors and stuff, and well, they can at the moment, but that's what they've been doing, and they're on the ground doing work, and they work in a volunteer in a really unthinkable situation. And I was thinking about Aaron Bushnell, who's the serviceman who self-immolated earlier this year, and it hit me in a way that I didn't expect. And
Yeah, it was devastating.
yeah, there was something about it that felt so stark. I don't know. It just felt it felt bleak. And I was just I think about him a lot, and I couldn't believe that he hadn't been memorialized or honored in a way as someone who did this terrible, unspeakable thing to try to
Bring awareness.
scream into the
Yeah.
void. And so I felt like I wanted to do something, which we're ultimately powerless, but maybe we have some help with like money can help alleviate the thing, whatever you can do. And then feel like I wanted to honor this memory of this person and wanted to try to hold that pain of that person.
And where can people buy the song and contribute?
It's on Bandcamp, so islandsmusic.bandcamp.com, and it's $3, or you can pay more, and then I'm just going to take that money that ends up in my PayPal account and pass it on. Or you can go right to the GLIA website and donate directly, glia.org.
Yeah, Tom and I always talk about like we just think it's really great that you are someone who like you do a lot of like activist work, and you like put your money where your mouth is, and you
walk the walk.
Yeah, you
with
walk the
stuff.
walk, and
You're
it's
not-
it's really it's just nice to see. It's admirable, and like it's we live in a time where a lot of people posting on social media, and that's all well and good, and it's great and it's important, but also to like take that next step and actually do charity work and volunteer work and protest. It's just really important.
Thanks. Yeah, I mean, it feels like, what else can I do? It's almost like self-serving in a way. It's like going to a protest is just mostly, it's ultimately kind of ineffectual, as we've seen.
Yeah, in this day and age.
But it alleviates some pain, and it makes me feel like there's a community of people that feel the same way. And so there is a feeling of like, we're not alone. I don't know, it's a complicated thing, but it doesn't feel radical to me. It just feels basic human decency, and like human rights should be universal, and it's just that simple, and so none of it feels radical. It just feels crazy.
And to live in a time where like what we're going through right now, it does seem like common sense is radical, is very,
it's
very
odd.
confusing.
Yeah. It's crazy making.
Yeah, it is. It makes
and
you feel
I think
insane.
it's by design too, but that's another podcast. Maybe.
Yeah, we usually don't get so heavy on outgrown.
No, but it's
Yeah.
important.
No,
It's
we
important.
asked you, and it's
Yeah.
incredibly important.
Yeah, and we're both on a personal level just huge admirers of you for so many different reasons, and this is one of them.
Thank you. Well, it's mutual. I admire the work you guys do with animal rescue, and I know that they're interlinked, and like animals don't have, like, we are the stewards of them. And so I know how important that is too, to look out for people who can't look out for themselves, you know.
Exactly. Well, this has been really amazing having you on and talking about this, and appreciate you kind of going deep into your journey to this point. And it's really impressive to hear you talk like this and explain. It gives a lot of context for your art.
Yeah.
Can I end it on a lighter question?
Yeah.
What's like the dumbest hairstyle you've ever tried to pull off?
Well, it is the Knox gelatin. I could find the photos, but it's like these spikes.
I will be asking you to find.
It's
those
awful.
photos.
It's truly embarrassing. And I felt without it, I felt naked. I mean, I felt like I needed to have
The hairstyle.
Yeah.
You
it
had
was
to
like-
let the world know who you are
I
inside.
needed like the spiky thing, and I don't know.
I can't wait to see.
The photos exist, everybody.
They're out there.
Is there a photo of the shaved head?
There might be like in like a photo album at my parents'
No
place.
photo. I'm assuming no one took a photo
Mid-
with the Three Stooges hair.
The mushroom cut.
Damn
No,
it.
Immediately we're
that's
like,
lost to time.
because if there were no cell phones then with people grabbing pictures.
Yeah.
That's one of the reasons the technology. That's one of the maybe the first time I'm like, yeah, that's
Yeah.
justifies cell phones.
Yeah.
Would have been to get the picture mid haircut.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, thank you so much, Nick.
Thank you guys. Love you.
Thank you.
Love
Love
you
you
too.
too.
All right, everyone. We'll see you next time.
Yeah. We'll see you soon. Bye.
Bye.